Hey Miss Scott, this is Sophia, and I'm going to be doing this as my blog 6. So, you asked us to discuss censorship, and you talked to me earlier today where I showed you a list of books, which link in the blog, had quite a few books that I had already read, which includes but is not limited to Perks of Being a Wallflower, Kite Runner, The Lovely Bones, To Kill a Mockingbird, Brave New World, so on and so forth. And it bothered me because most of these books were actually some of my favorite books for reasons that included that they were not exactly, it's not that they exactly portrayed life honestly, but they portrayed it in a sense that made me think deeper in a context as opposed to some easier literary reads that didn't have such deep themes, and that's precisely what makes them all profoundly readable. And one of the books on there, I think, would not because it's a contemporary classic exactly, but more because it's more on my level for a generation. Perks of Being a Wallflower. See, the reason why it bothers me for censorship on books, especially, is that a lot of what's supposedly meant to be banned, such as sexuality, drug use, and like child abuse, so on and so forth, that's all included in Perks of Being a Wallflower. Those are exactly what makes the book so heavy and meaningful towards students and teachers and parents, as long as they can take it not exactly literally, but at least with more meaning than having drug use in there just for entertainment value, because we all know that when you're in high school you're not meant to, but you're more likely to experience drug use, or as Charlie does in here, he's exploring his own sexuality and confronting his past by discovering his sexuality with Sam. And that's exactly why I'm against having censorship, because when you don't exactly know a line to draw when you're trying to portray something honestly and whether or not there's entertainment value. Yes, it's entertaining for Charlie to go on a LSD trip and seeing dragons and trying to fight it while he's actually at a New Year's party, but the point is that he's having the experience of having drug use because he's a teenager and it's a new experience for him, and he's going through, the stages of life. And it's what makes the book meaningful to teenagers because they can relate to it, and then it's easier for them to look deeper onto Charlie's further emotions as the book continues. Now, I talked to you about a movie called Requiem for a Dream, which I would never watch with my parents because it's extremely graphic. Now, obviously, Requiem for a Dream isn't a banned book because it's a movie, but I'm using it as an example because of how explicit material can be used properly, per se. When in Requiem for a Dream, as a basic summary, it's about 4 different people that end up going down a path of drug abuse and addiction that ends up leading them all to different places. A girl ends up as a prostitute. A guy ends up getting his arm infected and amputated because of heroin use, and another one winds up in jail for distribution of heroin. And the last one, which really threw, I'm sure, most viewers for a loop, was the one who had his arm amputated. His mother wanted to lose weight and ended up becoming addicted to diet pills, and she ends up overusing and then eventually abusing them, which sends her into psychosis and ends her in a psychiatric facility for treatment. But the point is that these were all legitimately good people. None of them were part of the mafia. None of them were part of some huge drug ring. The one who ends up becoming a prostitute was in a relationship with the amputee, and they wanted to start a life together, and they wanted to stay away from heroin, but that was their only means of getting money to start a new life. And obviously the mother had no ill intention of abusing diet pills. She just wanted to lose weight. so these weren't bad people, they just made bad decisions, and ultimately that's what led to their demise. Now, obviously, if you try to portray two adults as, you know, as for their, what is it? See, okay, rewind. If we use the prostitute and she only used her sexuality, she starts using her sexuality as a means to get heroin because that's the point where she gets so addicted she's depending. If she ends up doing that, but then they try to downplay it, you forget the severity of where she's at. And then eventually at the very end, when she's willingly degrading herself to get heroin, again, if you downplay that, then, or even just barely imply what happens to her in the end, then you're downplaying the meaning of the movie. It's an extremely graphic movie for a reason. It's to show exactly how obscure and demented people will go to get to the lengths of drugs, and they don't even have to be bad people. That's the point of the movie. You don't have to be a bad person to make wrong decisions and get addicted to drugs. And that's where I feel that, again, tying it back to censorship in books, that people don't understand that content isn't just there just for the sake of being there most of the time. It's meant to actually have people understand that there's more to life than, you know, frivolous stories. But when it comes to graphicness, obviously it makes people think about something, because most people don't want to think about graphicness because usually that's when things become real. Now, when it comes to limiting what children can read, obviously there should be a limit as to like when they can be introduced to certain content, so it's more likely that they could handle it in a better manner as opposed to overthinking about it. But that's more, I believe, on a parent's decision, because obviously the parent is going to be the closest to the child, so they're going to know how they're adapting and how maturely they can handle certain content, as opposed to teachers who only see them in a student environment, and chances are they'll regroup them into the same group as other children. So you can have someone in an AP class who can't handle the vulgarity in, say, what was it, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, or To Kill a Mockingbird, or The Catcher in the Rye, but you have someone who's in, seventh grade English, who's actually mature for their age, and they can seriously have something to gain from reading more graphic or more heavy novels. So I think that banning books does no good for anyone, in the sense that it's really out of their limits to ban it from every student that I think should have the right to choose what they read. Obviously, if their parents think that it's inappropriate, then that's more of a family structure. It's more of a family thing as opposed to an educational, where it should be their right to be educated. But if their parents have an issue because they think that they're not mature enough to handle the content, then that's a personal reason, not a political one or a social one. And yeah, I believe there's going to be 2 links in the doobly-doo, so thank you, Miss Scott.